fantastic turnout. While everyone is standing, please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to this great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
It's not their choice, it's you. Not their choices, everyday people from all walks of life who have always been the backbone of our economy. I have nothing against Fortune 500 companies. They're an important part of our economy, and we welcome them. And we're glad we have Fortune 500 companies in America. But the backbone of the American economy has never been the people whose pictures come out in Forbes magazine. The backbone is everyday people that start a business. You know, they started the wife and the husband, and 10 years later they employ 25 people. And that's not happening. And if you want to go to the heart and to the root of why our economy is not growing and jobs aren't being created, is because I've outlined is not happening. People are not starting businesses. They're not growing their businesses. They're not going into business for themselves. They're not hiring people. That is no longer happening. And we have to figure out why it's not happening. I can tell you why it's not. I mean, I can tell you what the cause isn't. It isn't because we've run out of good ideas. Americans haven't run out of good ideas. It isn't because Americans have forgotten how to create jobs. It's because there is an impediment. There are things standing in the way. Now, I don't have all the answers to what those things are, and not all of them have something to do with government. But some of them do. We have a tax code that's broken. Okay? And it's not just because it's too high. There's all kinds of stuff in that tax code that does not belong in there. That was a product, not of good public policy, but of good lobbying. And here's what people don't understand about the tax code when we talk about tax reform. Big businesses, they may not like it, but they can deal with it. A big corporation can hire all kinds of accountants and lawyers and lobbyists to deal with it. Who can't hire that? Who cannot deal with the tax code? The small and mid-sized businesses. What about the regulations is the same thing. The regulation side, big businesses may not like regulations, but they can deal with it. They can hire lawyers and accountants to figure the way around it, and if they don't like the regulations, they can hire lobbyists to try to change it. Who can't deal with the regulations? The small and mid-sized businesses and the people that are trying to make it in the world. And that's those are two of the fundamental things that government has done. And here's what frustrates me to no end. There's actually consensus on this. I heard the President of the United States at the State of the Union say that we have to look at regulations and get rid of those that don't make sense. And yet, that's not happening. I heard the President say that the tax code is broken and that he wants there to be tax reform, and Republicans are saying the same thing, and yet that's not happening. I've heard him say, oh, the corporate tax rate is too high. And when people think corporate tax rate, what it really hurts is manufacturing, the ability to build things in this country. And everyone says, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, it's got to be lowered. But that's not happening. Instead, it seems like everyone's gone into re-election campaign mode. And meanwhile, people are hurting. So we are going to have an election. And in elections, you get to choose the direction of our country. And believe me, I have very strong disagreements, as you well know, with many of the decisions that this administration has made. But I think that this is not a time, putting that aside for a second, this is not a time for Washington to be arguing about things we agree on. My goal is, let's take care of the things we agree on, and then let's have an election and decide these other things. Because our economy cannot continue to languish the way it's languishing now. And here's what really makes me sad. The 21st century, there is no reason why the 21st century shouldn't be the American century. There's no reason. The world is coming our way. You know, when you read about Brazil and countries like that are growing economically, that's not a threat to America. That's an opportunity for America. That means there's more Brazilians that can buy the stuff we invent. That means there's more Brazilians that can get on airplanes and come here and travel and leave all their money at our tourist destinations. And this is true all over the world, as long as it's fair. As long as it's equal, as long as there's not special benefits that make it easier for people to move businesses overseas. Emerging economies in other countries is a positive for us. No country in the world stands to benefit from that more than we do. But we have to be ready for it. We have to embrace it. What I would hate to see is us abandon the things that have made us great. In times of fear is when people sometimes look to things that don't work. You know, we're not anarchists. We have to have government. There has to be some level of government. Right? If there's a fire in this building today, God forbid, we want fire department to respond. We're always fortunate to have our law enforcement officers, and you know, we want infrastructure investment. Government is important, but we can't have a government that we can't afford. And the most startling statistic that we have to realize is we owe $15 trillion. We are the richest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. There has never been an economy like this one, ever. This size, this magnitude, this prosperity. And yet we have a government that not even the richest country in the history of the world can afford. Think about that. We have a federal government that not even the richest country in the history of the world, us, can afford. We now borrow close to 41 cents out of every dollar that we spend. And there is no plan in place to reverse course anytime soon. In fact, it gets worse. You want to know how bad it can get very quickly? Look to Europe. Look to Greece. Look to these countries that are in a debt spiral. Except that in America, we'll happen faster. So these issues have to be dealt with. And the number one thing we can do is get jobs and economic growth. If we have an economy that's growing and an economy that's creating jobs, all these other problems become easier to solve. You have people working, you have people going back to work, your deficit goes down because you have more taxpayers. Not more taxes, more taxpayers. You have people back to work, you don't have as many foreclosures because they can make their monthly mortgage payment. You have people back to work, making money, you have people taking their families out to dinner on weekends like they used to do before, thereby helping to employ people and create economic growth and prosperity. You have people buying things for their house, you have people remodeling, you have people constructing, you have people building. We have to get back to that. And that's what we want to hear. So I know there are a lot of people here that have created jobs. I know there are a lot of people here that are creating jobs. And what I want to hear today is what are the things that are standing in the way of that happening right now. Most of all, I want to make sure that I'm on the same wavelength. And Washington is a very insular place, very inward looking. You get into that bubble and everyone's talking to themselves. And it's an amazing experience. I know Gary served there, so he knows this full well. It's an amazing experience to go there. You literally get to this vortex that you kind of believe it's the center of the universe. And yet there's this whole real world out there that sees things very differently than what's in the bubble of Washington. So it's important for me to come here and get some therapy from you, because I can't become a part of that. You cite the number 300,000, and I don't know that statistic, but I take your word for it. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of pain. I think it's actually a national epidemic, a national problem, and you know, we probably need to address it a little bit better than we have. Like some of the issues you've outlined here today, this last question, I never would have heard that in Washington. You're never going to get that from a staff person or a lobbyist or a news reporter. You're only going to get that by going out and talking to people like this, and we hope to do more of this. Obviously, you know, we spend a lot of time up there because that's where the action is, but every chance we have to come back, we want to come back. And I'm just grateful that you would come out here today and listen to me and give me the input you've given me. I hope you agree with most of what I said. Most importantly, I hope you feel like we valued your input. Thank you so much. Thank you for all. Thank you. God bless you.